Karen was the type of neighbor who always peered through her lace curtains, watching everything that happened on her quiet street. With a pair of binoculars in hand, she believed it was her duty to keep the neighborhood safe from any trouble. She had a knack for spotting what she thought were suspicious activities, often jumping to conclusions without having all the facts. Children playing outside suddenly became rowdy teens in her eyes, and any noise from the next yard was seen as a potential threat. Today, however, Karen's watchful eye was drawn to a more alarming sight. As she sipped her lukewarm coffee on her porch, she noticed someone throwing eggs at mailboxes further down the street. Her heart raced at the thought of vandalism right under her nose. Instantly, she assumed it must be that quiet teen who lived next door, a boy who rarely spoke and kept to himself. In Karen's mind, he had "troublemaker" written all over him. Without a moment's hesitation, she grabbed her phone and dialed the police, ready to report what she considered dangerous behavior. Blinded by suspicion, she didn't stop to consider that perhaps it might not be him at all. Little did she know that her actions would spark a whirlwind of consequences for both herself and her family in the days to come. As Karen sat on her porch, the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the neighborhood. Suddenly, she heard a loud splat and turned her head to see a flurry of white egg yolk streaking across a shiny mailbox. Her heart sank as she spotted a figure in the distance, laughing and running away after hurling another egg. The sight sent her mind racing. Karen squinted against the fading light, trying to make out the culprit's face. It was then that she noticed the quiet teen next door, a boy named Ethan, sneaking away from the scene. He rarely spoke and always seemed to be lurking in the shadows, which only fueled Karen's suspicions. Of course, it's him, she thought, her mind jumping to conclusions faster than her heart could beat. Without taking a second to confirm what she saw, she grabbed her phone with shaking hands and dialed the police. "There's someone egging mailboxes," she exclaimed, urgency clear in her voice. "I think it's that troublesome boy next door." As she hung up, Karen felt a sense of pride for taking action to protect her neighborhood. Meanwhile, in reality, Ethan had nothing to do with the prank at all. It was actually her grandson who was caught on video by another neighbor's Ring camera. But Karen's quick judgment had already set events into motion that would soon unravel everything she thought she knew about her community and family. With her heart racing, Karen pressed the phone against her ear, the urgency of the moment sending a surge of adrenaline through her veins. "This is it. I'm doing the right thing," she assured herself, convinced that a good neighbor should always stand up against trouble. As the phone rang, she imagined how proud her community would be when they learned of her swift action to stop vandalism. Finally, someone answered, and Karen wasted no time explaining the situation. "Yes, I just saw someone egging mailboxes down the street," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and determination. "I think it's that boy next door, Ethan. He's always quiet and sneaky." Her mind raced with thoughts of how she was protecting everyone from a mischievous teen who needed to be kept in check. As she spoke to the dispatcher, Karen envisioned neighbors patting her on the back for looking out for their safety. Her resolve felt strong. She believed in justice and accountability. Yet beneath that facade of confidence lay an undercurrent of fear about what this might mean for her neighborhood, an unease she quickly dismissed as unnecessary worrying. After hanging up, Karen took a deep breath, feeling like a guardian on duty. Little did she know that her actions would lead to consequences far beyond what she anticipated, turning her intentions upside down in ways that would soon become painfully clear. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows down the street, a neighbor named Mrs. Thompson checked her Ring camera footage. She had heard the commotion earlier and wanted to see what had happened. As she scrolled through the clips, her heart sank when she recognized the figure throwing eggs at mailboxes. It was not Ethan, the quiet teen Karen had accused, it was none other than Karen's own grandson, Jake. Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened in disbelief as she watched Jake laugh with his friends, oblivious to the trouble he was causing. She paused the video and replayed it, shaking her head in disappointment. This was the boy she had seen growing up, now engaging in such reckless behavior. The irony of the situation struck her. Karen, who had been so quick to judge Ethan, was completely unaware that her own family member was the real troublemaker. Feeling compelled to act, Mrs. Thompson decided to inform the neighborhood about what she had discovered. She shared the footage with a few neighbors, who were equally shocked. The news spread quickly, and soon everyone was talking about how Karen had wrongfully blamed Ethan while protecting her grandson. As this revelation circulated, Karen would soon find herself facing the fallout of her actions, as well as the truth that would turn her world upside down. The very community she thought she was protecting would now see her in a different light. As the news of Karen's blunder spread through the neighborhood, whispers turned into conversations, and soon everyone was talking. What began as a simple act of community vigilance quickly morphed into a tidal wave of gossip that engulfed Karen. Neighbors exchanged surprised glances and hushed discussions whenever they crossed paths, their judgment palpable in the air. At the grocery store, Karen overheard two women discussing her actions, their voices dripping with criticism. "Can you believe she called the cops on Ethan?" one of them said, shaking her head. "And it was her own grandson all along." The embarrassment washed over Karen like a cold wave, but she couldn't summon the courage to confront them. Instead, she silently pushed her cart down the aisle, feeling like every item was a reminder of her mistake. The weekends took on an uncomfortable silence as neighbors avoided her at community events. Children played on the street while their parents whispered behind closed doors about Karen's hasty judgment. Meanwhile, Karen felt more isolated than ever, an outsider in her own community. In a desperate attempt to save face, she tried to explain herself to a few neighbors, but it only led to more awkwardness. To make matters worse, families began placing passive-aggressive yard signs that read, "Be careful who you blame," or "Don't judge a book by its cover," signs clearly pointed at Karen. Each new sign felt like another jab at her pride, leaving her to navigate the fallout from her rash actions alone. As the days passed, the neighborhood's discontent grew more vocal and visible, creating a tense atmosphere that hung like storm clouds over Karen's home. Neighbors who once exchanged friendly greetings now passed her by with cold shoulders and murmurs. At community gatherings, she became the elephant in the room as conversations faded whenever she approached. Some neighbors felt bold enough to express their disapproval openly. During a neighborhood watch meeting, one resident chimed in with a sarcastic smile, "We should really thank Karen for keeping us all safe from mischief makers. Or are they called grandsons now?" The laughter that followed felt like daggers to Karen, who sat stiffly in her chair, cheeks burning with humiliation. On her daily walks, she noticed signs popping up on lawns, each one sharper than the last. "Trust but verify," and "The truth will egg you on," adorned yards in bright colors, meant to jab at her pride. One particularly biting sign read, "Think twice before you call the cops." Karen felt the weight of every word pressed down on her. Even children started joining in, while riding bikes past her house, they would chant mockingly, "Karen's grandson threw the eggs." Their giggles echoed cruelly in her ears as she watched from her window, feeling more isolated than ever. The relentless pressure from all sides turned what should have been a simple misunderstanding into an ongoing nightmare for Karen. She was left grappling with not only her own mistakes but also the growing resentment of those around her. While Karen faced the wrath of her neighbors, her grandson Jake was dealing with his own set of consequences. Once a carefree and playful boy, he now found himself grounded for the entire summer. The news of his actions spread quickly, and he became the focal point of conversations among friends, making it impossible for him to escape the embarrassment. Jake had always enjoyed spending time with his buddies at the park or going to the pool, but now those plans had been dashed. "I can't believe you did something so dumb," one of his friends said during a phone call, trying to mask their disappointment. The laughter and fun they once shared had shifted into awkward silence as they tiptoed around what had happened. At home, the tension was palpable. Karen, burdened by guilt over her misjudgment and its repercussions for Jake, struggled to connect with him. She tried to reason with him about his choices but ended up feeling like an outsider in her own family. Jake resented being punished not just for his actions but also for the embarrassment that came from being the subject of neighborhood gossip. As summer stretched on, Jake's frustration grew. He missed out on activities and felt isolated from both friends and family. Each day felt longer than the last, as he counted down until he could finally reclaim some sense of normalcy after this summer filled with regret. What should have been a carefree season turned into a lesson on accountability that would linger long after school started again. As the weeks went by, the division in the community became more apparent. Friends who had once laughed and shared barbecues began to take sides, with some supporting Karen and others standing by Ethan, the quiet teen she had accused. The air was thick with tension as neighbors avoided each other, unsure of how to navigate the rift caused by Karen's hasty actions. Discussions about neighborhood safety transformed into debates over trust and culpability. Some residents wondered aloud if they could still rely on each other, questioning whether they were safe from wrongful accusations or misunderstandings. The once tight-knit community felt fragile, as friendships strained under the weight of betrayal and gossip. At a town meeting intended to address crime prevention, Karen found herself sitting silently at the back, feeling like an outsider in a room full of familiar faces. Neighbors exchanged wary glances, and conversations grew quieter when she tried to join in. "If we can't trust each other," one resident said pointedly, "how can we protect our neighborhood?" The comment stung Karen deeply, echoing her fear that she had not only damaged her own reputation but also the trust that held everyone together. As summer wore on, families who had once been friends now found themselves divided by opinions and loyalties. The community that had flourished on shared values was now in disarray, leaving Karen to witness firsthand how one reckless decision could fracture relationships and erode trust among neighbors. The fallout from her actions was far-reaching, leaving scars that would take time, and effort, to heal. In the quiet moments at home, Karen found herself reflecting deeply on the events that had unfolded. Sitting in her living room, surrounded by the silence that had replaced the once vibrant chatter of her neighborhood, she felt a heavy weight on her chest. It was becoming clear to her that her quick decision to call the police had spiraled into something far worse than she ever anticipated. As she replayed the day of the incident in her mind, Karen couldn't shake the feeling of regret. What if I had taken a moment to think, she pondered, recognizing that her assumptions about Ethan, purely based on his quiet demeanor, had been rooted in fear rather than fact. The more she reflected, the more she realized that her actions created unnecessary drama in a community that had once felt like home. Karen's heart ached as she thought about Jake, her grandson, who was now paying for her mistake with a summer of isolation. The grief of seeing her family affected weighed heavily on her conscience. She remembered how much joy they used to share as a family and how those moments were now clouded by shame and discomfort. Sitting alone with these thoughts, Karen vowed to learn from this experience. "I need to rebuild trust," she told herself, acknowledging that understanding and compassion would be essential moving forward. As she contemplated ways to make amends with both neighbors and Jake, a flicker of hope emerged amid her remorse, a determination to do better and heal the wounds she had unintentionally caused. Determined to make amends, Karen decided it was time to take action. She began by reaching out to Jake, her grandson, sitting down with him for a heartfelt conversation. "I'm so sorry for what I made you go through," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You didn't deserve that punishment because of my mistake." Jake looked at her, his expression softening as he realized she truly understood the burden her actions had placed on him. Next, Karen knew she had to face her neighbors and restore the trust she had broken. She organized a small gathering in her backyard, inviting everyone in the hopes of clearing the air. With each person who arrived, Karen felt both nervous and hopeful. When the moment came, she spoke honestly about her mistake. "I let my assumptions cloud my judgment," she admitted. "I acted too quickly and unfairly blamed Ethan when it should have been my own family I focused on." To her relief, several neighbors began to express their support and shared their own stories of misunderstandings. The openness allowed them to reconnect over shared experiences rather than resentments. As the evening progressed, laughter replaced tense silence, and old friendships began to mend. Feeling lighter after making these connections, Karen left the gathering with a renewed sense of purpose. She understood that moving forward meant being patient and thoughtful in her interactions with others. With her heart open to growth and understanding, Karen was determined to transform from a suspicious neighbor into one who encouraged kindness and trust within her community.